Hi, this is Lizzy and I would like to make another Stampscapes card. This one comes under the category of simple Stampscapes. There's really not much to it. It's relying on the strength of the image to create impact in the card, and the clean lines as far as beautiful imagery and very intense contrasting color. Just green, just black. That's pretty much it. And the strength of the colors and the quality of the image, I think, is what gives this card character. And then just beautiful little sentiment, really clean, suits very much the image. I love putting chipboard under the edge of a card. So right here under the white is a piece of chipboard that's matched very well. This piece of black right here is 1/8 of an inch bigger on each side, so that you have a 1/16 going around the edge, so really clean, makes it pop. And then again, I've got chipboard under there, lifting it up underneath the white, and then again there's a border that makes a 1/16 all the way around. So this is very, very clean, very easy, and relying on beautiful Stampscapes to make them work. Here is another card from the same class that I did. This is a little different. It has just a touch, and it's very hard to see on the camera, just a touch of blue right here and just a touch of yellow. And then the inside, again, super clean lines. This is really appropriate for anyone. You could give this to a guy, give this to a woman, and I think they'd appreciate the cleanness of this. Here's one more card. This has some masking done so that we could have a sun there, a little bit of blue, and again all the chipboard underneath here, underneath there, and it gives a weightiness to the card that feels good when you look at it and when you feel it. And here's the inside of this card. Just simple. I love Stampscapes. They're so beautiful and they're so clean. Okay, so let's go back to the first one. This is, you could call it a twinchy. It's 2 inches square, and the idea is to create a little world on a piece of paper. So, like this. That could have worked all by itself. This makes for a great class if you're starting Stampscapes in your area, and you just want to start people off with understanding how to make a little world here that's more like a photograph, because these images are too big to be on this card. And so when you take a snapshot, you're cropping something, and sometimes it makes people uncomfortable because they feel like everything has to be on that piece of paper, and that's not really true. When you take a photograph, you're cropping already. And so that's what you're creating here. You're creating a cropped image, a little world right here. And then all you have to do really is just match your sentiment so that it has a blending of style. So I want to show you, this came from a very strange place. I love tailored expressions. They're wonderful stamps, and they always come with beautiful matching sentiments. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. You're always getting something that you can use on any given occasion. So I love the sentiments so much. They matched the style of the Stampscapes I was doing. So if you're interested in this, it's called Sunflower Bouquet, and it's from Tailored Expressions. And they're wonderful stamps. You'd love them. Alright, so let's take a look at this. Here is a piece of paper we're going to make our little world on. This is way easier than some of the cards that I've made on video and had in the store. So that's going to be great. Maybe my video won't be so long this time. So I'm going to put this here. Let's take a look at our stamp. This is pretty dense. Let's take a look at another one. And you can see they need a little bit of cleaning. So I always keep on hand a toothbrush, because no matter what I do when I clean the stamp, there's always a little debris on it later. So I'm going to brush it off with my toothbrush. Before we start this card, I think something that I haven't been good about doing in the past is just giving you the measurements of all the papers here. So let's take a look so that you can have it to get started. Alright, so this is a twinchy, or a 2-inch square. So 2 inches square. Then the mat behind it is, the black mat is 2 1/8 inch square. So on both sides. There's a piece of chipboard underneath there, underneath the white. That's exactly the same size as the white, so 2 inches square. Then we have our white piece right here. Oops, almost went metric there. Alright, that's 3 1/4. So this white piece right here is 3 1/4, and going up the side it's going to be 4 1/2 right there, 4 1/2. The chipboard piece underneath it is exactly the same size. And then this black piece is going to be 1/8 of an inch bigger, 3 3/8 right here. Okay, and then going up the side it's going to be 4 5/8, like so. Alright, and then this piece, this green piece right here, alright, is 3 7/8. Okay, and then it's 5 1/8. Then the black mat behind that is going to be 4 inches by 5 1/4 inch. So there's a very important reason why I'm very particular about my mats right here. When you're looking at a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, you really want to get the most cuts you can out of it. So because a 12 by 12 is 12 inches across, this mat right here, which was from a 12 by 12, I wanted to make sure that the black mat I used, which was also 12 by 12, I could get 6 pieces out of. So I cut the black mat at 4 inches 3 times across the 12 by 12. And then 5 1/4. So now I have 6 of these mats. So then that meant, because this was a 12 by 12, I just cut it 1/8 of an inch smaller, and I also got 6 pieces of that. So, and then that meant that this piece right here is a whole 1/4 of an inch bigger on each side, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that's an 8 1/2 by 11 piece of paper, scored down the long side and cut in half that way. Let's take a look at the stamps I'm using. We're using Shag Bark Hickory 242G, Curvilinear Road 145F, it's hard to say all that, Tent 083B, that wasn't quite as hard. Look at the detail on that tent. Alright, so not much to this card, actually. The other thing we're going to use today for a change is Memento Tuxedo Black. Since you're really relying on the depth of the color of the black, make sure your ink pad has been freshly refilled, so you're going to get a beautiful quality image on that. Here's our little world we're going to do. So I'm going to stamp this little piece right here, and again, if you're going to do a card class, this is a great way to start because there's not much to it. Let's talk about stamping such a dense image. I've seen a lot of people, instead of doing something like this, they'll hold it in their hand and put the ink on like this. I don't have a lot of power that way. So that would be more difficult for me. And then again, pressing too hard on your ink pad like this. So how about keeping the strong part down, this block, and then having a lot of control this way. Maybe putting your finger in the middle. Make sure you've covered everything. And now I'm going to tilt it and I don't know what you can see, but I can see the glare of the lights on the black, and I know that everything has been stamped really well. Okay, so all we're going to do is just cover a small part of this. Let's keep in mind that you're losing 1/4 inch off your block pretty much right here. So keep that in mind when you're stamping. So if I'm looking right over the stamp and I'm matching it up with the edge of my cardstock, I might want to come down about 1/4 inch like so. So let's take this away for a second. Keep in mind that obviously not all the tree is going to be on there. Let's see what happens. Press down the middle. That looks awesome. Stampscapes live on. They're so fabulous. Okay, so then let's take a look at this one. Here's my tent. It's got a lot of dots here on the bottom, which makes it great for blending into the grass if we were going all the way into the grass. But I noticed when I did this that I had quite a bit of, if it's too high, then you've got this world of dots underneath that and it doesn't look so sharp. Let's take a look. That's what happened in the middle right here, see? It would have been better if it was down more, or if I had removed some of the dots. Might have looked a little better, or at least went off the page a bit. So let's keep that in mind when you're stamping it. Again, maybe put this down this way this time. That makes more sense. See the glare of the lights on your stamp? I'm not quite sure. So I'm just going to do a little bit more. Look, there's 1/4 inch all the way around. So I'm going to line it up here, and for sure, I'm thinking with the 1/4 inch, I have to come down almost 1/2 inch to make sure that I've got the more important tent image rather than all the dots. Let's see what happens. Okay, I like that. I think what I'm going to do is try to get some more dots here. And I think in order to have everything look the same, I'm going to add some dots on the other side. The great news is there's a lot of dots here. So let's utilize that. Don't press too hard on the dots. If you press too hard, they'll be big and ugly. So let's just gently put them here. See what happened. Okay, perfect. Ink up again. Let's try again. Great. All right. Love that. You could create any kind of card with that. Maybe just put some black behind there just to make it show up. Let's see why that's important. Here's our image. It's looking beautiful all by itself. Let's mess with it just a bit. Let's not put it with anything and see what happens. Here's a piece of white cardstock. All right. And it's going to be on something that's mostly white. All right. So here it is looking not very fabulous. So let's take just the mat. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. All right, so then let's take the mat for this and see why it might be fun to put chipboard under it. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, correct that. Let's see if we can fix it all. The thing about having a 1/16 surrounding your piece of paper is you have to glue it on straight, so that's kind of a drag. All right, there we go. Ooh, looks like there's some trimming that has to be done. All right, so here we are. Everything is not mounted on chipboard. All right, and that's okay. It's all right. Let's get our card. I have, this is what I do in the back of my card so that when folks come along to see my card, they can see when I made it and everything that I used to make it. And I'm saying like that, like I've done that forever, and I really haven't. I started doing it about a couple of months ago, but I think it helps a lot because everybody who's been stamping for a while can scan that and get a really good idea of what was used and move on from there. Alright, so I was going to use the back of that card to pretend it was another background, but let's use the inside of this one. Okay, now that's alright. It's okay. But it's kind of got no weight to it and it's a little bit flimsy. So I think you'd have to try this yourself to see what I mean when adding chipboard might be something that you'd like to do that would add a weightiness to the card. It's so hard to see that on video, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is, here's my chipboard. That's on there. It's going to go on here. And I'm going to glue all of this together, or tape it, or roll it, or however you'd like to do that, okay? We've got our little piece. It's got some weight to it. It's looking sharp and clean. And it's going to go somewhere around there. Here's our original. And believe it or not, it's much easier to do this piece first and get your tree where you want it and your tent where you want it than it is to do this piece right here. So let's take a look right here where we're gauging our tree trunk, and it's going to go about a third in from the right, maybe a little bit more. It's one more tree trunk and it would almost be in the middle. So there's our placement. Let's put that aside and let's get this piece right here. So we've got our square that was stamped out right there. You might be tempted to do your sentiment first, just to make sure that your sentiment worked out on the piece of paper. Sometimes you got your whole card finished and it's looking beautiful and you know how long it took you to make, and then you realize, hey, I didn't stamp my sentiment on it, and then your hand shakes hoping that you don't screw it up when you're stamping. Alright, so you'll notice I haven't done my grass either yet. Right now I'm going to concentrate on this, see where my placement is. I know it's going to go off the page like so. It's sort of a third in from the right, and I feel like I'm going to leave plenty of room for a sentiment, so we're going to put that down. And I think we have to do the sentiment after the tree because it's so hard to know where to put it. It's got to go in between the branches properly. Okay, look, that was easy. Might be a little bit crooked. Nah, looks good. Right, here's our sentiment. Let's practice, okay? I've picked Thankful for You, but you know, Happy Birthday would be good. Here it is. I've drawn a line with a marker right onto my block. If you need to take that line off, you can just use denatured alcohol or an alcohol wipe, get that right off. But it helps me line up the bottom of my sentiment so it's straight. So that means when I'm stamping, I can use the block and line it up on the paper and make sure that it's going to be straight, because this is just cut out. There's nothing straight about the way this cling looks on this block. So that's my way of helping myself. Okay, so I'm going to move this over so I can stamp away from the clip on the clipboard. And I'm going to stand up and gauge my block over my piece of paper, keeping in mind where my trees are, making sure that it's straight. There we go, I hope. There we go. Right, so the line, lining it up against the edge of the card helps a lot. Don't worry, it's not permanent. You can always take that line off. I did it with a fine point Sharpie marker. There's our sentiment, there's our tree. Let's take a look at the next part of our card we're going to put in the grass. Here's what it really looks like. So we're just using a portion. Definitely going to have to take into account 1/4 inch missing all the way around the back. But the beautiful thing about the way Kevin Nakagawa puts his stamps together is what you see in the front is where it is on the back. I always feel like that's true. And that would be important because you'd have to gauge properly when you're putting all your imagery together and have to understand where it's going to show up in relation to everything else. And so I feel like he does a wonderful job of making sure that's true. It's beautifully done. All right, so I'm going to ink up the back of this. This is the heaviest part, so I'm going to put it on its back. If your ink pad comes out gray, see if you can get a reinker. I would say my more serious stampers buy the re-inker when they buy the ink pad, just so they're not needing it sometime when they're deep into their creative efforts at home and all of a sudden they realize I'm not getting the kind of quality color that I would like to have. Alright, so let's take a look at what I meant when I said that the indexing on top of the stamp was perfectly placed, because it is. Alright, so when I look down on this, and you've got a great bird's eye view of this, I can see that my road is coming up a little too high to the tree. But on the other hand, I have to keep into account how much room there is on the block. So let's look straight down. I'm going to come up from the bottom and kind of put it where I would if I wanted the trunk to be in the trees. A little ways. I've got this curve to think about right here. I've got the 1/4 inch to think about, so I'm going to move it up a 1/4 inch now and take my best shot. Here we go. Don't push too hard on this side or your beautiful fine points of grass will be too thick and without fine detail. How did we do? Wow, it's right in the road. That's okay, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there because I have a feeling this will cover a multitude of sins. Let's take a look at this. There we go. Love that. Really happy with that. Okay, let's take a look how it's different from the other card. See, there's a little bit of difference here and there. Just a little bit higher up. Doesn't really matter. It's fine the way it is, right? When I did the class, just depending on how it worked out with everybody's was a little bit different. Sometimes the tree ended up being over here right off the side or over here, and it really didn't make a whole lot of difference. And with that black border right there, I can just cover that up and give the illusion that it was where I really wanted it to be. And then I would line up that tree trunk right there. Yay. Okay, so now the next job is to color this. I'm ready to put my grass in my card. This is where it's going to be. Sadly, Ranger is getting rid of their Adirondack brand, which is hard because I just love these for Stampscapes. I've used them for years with Stampscapes and love the color on them. This Adirondack green is probably your easiest, best choice, Meadow. But since I can no longer sell it in my store reliably until it runs out, I never know if I'm going to get something in or be able to get the re-inkers, I'm phasing them out in the store as well. And so now I've had to move to Mowed Lawn. And I love the distress inks. They're a little bit harder to use with the technique that I'm going to use today, but because they're a little bit more watery, it seems. But this is also a much brighter green. And it seems like all the distress inks, in a general way, have a brighter aspect to them. So, because I don't want that, and I want it to match the green that I picked out here, and I'm not willing to give up this green color, I'm going to tone this down. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do it with pumice stone. And it seems to work out very well. So whatever you have, and of course, don't be limited by whatever colors you already have. There's wonderful companies out there with great lines of ink pads, so just whatever works for you. I think the only defining factor is what color is this that you're using, and that's all you have to think about. Something that's not going to clash too much with that. Nothing wrong with using a pattern either, but I would say just because you can see kind of a hash or a hatch pattern right here or a linen pattern, it's very classy and very clean, and so perhaps it lends itself more to the card than a pattern would. But you know, look through your stuff, see what you have. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to use a Timmy. That's what I'm going to call it because it's shorter. Tim Holtz alcohol ink pad. And I'm going to make sure that my felt tip goes right over the side of this. I don't want to scratch what I'm doing with the Velcro on here. And I have to say that I really like the corners, so I can get in the corners a little bit. All right? If you're careful, you can just mostly get your ink right here. And then you can use this side for one color, this side, that back side, and this back side. And then you can get 4 colors out of this. Lots of times when I finish a class and I've had to lend these to students, I'll keep them all and I'll just make sure that I use every little piece of them before I toss them. So here's our ink pad. Let's take this aside for a bit and just do a quick little tutorial. I'm sure you're sick to death of this if you've ever seen my videos already. There's your color right there. It's pretty blotchy. Let's see what happens if I just rub it on here. There's all the blotching. Once I get that off, I can get a much nicer color right there. No blotching, no lines. Nice and smooth. And that's what I'm after. So tell yourself 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then until it runs out of ink. There's a little bit of blotch there. Okay? So that's all I'm doing. And I'm trying to just utilize this. If you get ink all over this, who's to say that when you tilt it back down, you don't pick up a blotch that's down here that you weren't able to get off. So try to control your range right here and just use that little piece right there. And I'm talking a lot and I can see it doesn't matter how easy the card is. I'm going to make it last for an hour. All right. So here we go. I'm going to move this over just a little bit right here so I can get away from this clipboard. I'm going to get rid of some of the ink, and now I'm just going to rub it where the grass is right here. If you hang around the edges too much, you're going to have strong green edges right here, so I'm going to stay away from them as much as I can. This is not that precise. If you want it to be more precise, I'd get a Q-tip in there so that I could get into the corners, but honestly, if you just get enough green, your eyes will take care of the corners for you. So when you're looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, boy, if I could just get into these corners and stuff, tell yourself to stop, because you really don't need to. You just have to give the illusion that all of the grass is green. Little variations in color is great too. So, well, see, look what I did. I just wrecked my card by putting that big green blotch there because I didn't take it off over here. What a drag. You know what? I don't think I can live with my card now. I'm going to have to redo that. I'm going to stamp really quick, but I'm going to leave this on the video so you can see what happens. Let's kind of finish a bit. Fortunately, as long as your teacher doesn't talk as much as I do, you can actually stamp this pretty quick. Stay away from the white. You really want to see that starkness. How about this? Let's use our Q-tip and get our green in that way, right there. There we go. I'd have to make my grass really green to get rid of that blotch, and I'm not quite prepared to make it that dark. So let's save that. And I'm going to stamp really quick and come back to you. Alright, I'm back. I stamped really quick. I swear it hardly takes any time at all as long as somebody isn't talking to you like I am. Alright, so this time the tree happened to get right there. So that's cool. Let's make sure that this is still going to work. Yep, works just fine. Doesn't matter, it's a little off to one side, that's great. No problem. Alright, let's see if I can do a better job of this. my ink off. Rub it right here. Don't hang around the corners too much or you'll have very green corners. Not very precise, not going to worry too much about it. Pat, 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 rub, rub, rub. Darker now. Just a little darker, pat, 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 rub, rub, rub. Alright, so that's about all I want to do for green right here. I could do it a little darker. Let's take a look at the original. There it is. Yeah, it could be darker. You can see the pumice stone that we're going to add is going to increase the depth of that color. Let's take a look at the one I did a boo-boo on, right there. Okay, a blotch that you really can't get rid of unless you don't mind making the card quite a bit darker. But I think I will put some more color in. And then just to save myself some grief, instead of using that, I'm going to use this Q-tip. Look at all the blotching I did in that corner right there. I'm going to leave it. I guess that'll teach me to make sure all corners of that have been cleared of blotches before I use it up here. So I guess the lesson there is just to make sure that if you're going to pat your ink on your Q-tip, make sure you don't rotate it too much. Look at that. It's pretty dark in this corner with the black, so. There we go. And in keeping with the rest of the card, I think I'm just going to leave that path with no color on it at all. So we've got that stark black and white thing going on. Alright, so we've got quite a bit of color there. Cover up your ink pad because you know you're going to stamp in it by accident. Here's the pumice stone. I'm going to move this over. I've tried to stay over on one side. Cover up my Velcro so I don't scratch my card. Nice and smooth. Rid of that. Now pumice stone is a very soft color, so you can see I'm just going to rub off in the same place so you can see it. It's just kind of a dull gray. Watch what happens when I use pumice stone on this grass. I still have my other samples, so you can take a look at the difference in color. I almost can't afford to take too much of that off. Again, if you've got the meadow from Adirondack or just a different color background paper, you may not feel the need to do this. And also I'm hanging around in this corner in the hopes that I can kind of tone down that blotch that I made in the first place right there. Use the corner of my tubing just to get in there. Here I am using a Q-tip just to be on the safe side. I'm actually being quite delicate. If you rub really hard, I don't know what it looks like when you're looking at the tape, but if you rub really hard, you have no control. So how about doing lots of rubs delicately rather than doing a couple of rubs with a heavy hand? Alright, so I like that. I'm going to see if I can tone down this area a little bit, because even though I try to let that blotch go in my mind, it's very hard to do, because I like the minutia of this. Alright, looks good. Get on this corner a bit. So I've toned down that green a fair bit. Let's take a look at the one where I have my blotch, but also just to get a hold of the green. Now, this is an attractive green, but maybe it doesn't match my paper as well as I would want it to. See the difference? So that's up to you. Do some testing. See, that's a much better match right there than this one that hasn't been toned down by pumice. See the difference? I hope it shows up. So we're ready to put this card together. Here's our little piece that we already did. Here's my white piece. Let's measure this. This is 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. And so that would be the size of the chipboard too. Chipboard, you can just use your Cheerios box or your nylons insert. Thought I'd stop and just show you how I put this little twinchy on my card. It's got a very thin layer of detailed glue on there. Doesn't matter what you use. There's my trunk. I'm going to match this trunk up here and this trunk down here. And whatever it ends up being from left to right is whatever it ends up being, which is, I think, really attractive. Look, I've got a little bit of black on there. Okay, just make sure it's straight. Right, and then this is going to go onto our card. Not like that. We have 2 more pieces to do. So here's the green piece I have. There's that mat. And then this is going to go under here, like so. And then this is going to go on here, and I'll be right back. Here's the card I started out with. Here's the one I made. Slight differences, really doesn't make a difference. Very happy with the way they look. And now we just have to do the inside. So let me measure these pieces of paper for you. So you know I'm going to say that this black piece of paper is 4 inches by 5 1/4, so I can get 6 out of a 12 by 12. Right, so that means this one is going to be 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. So this is going to go here, and I'm going to stamp it with something that matches. You could do the tree all the way down the side and then just have a little room to write, or you could take your tent stamp, pat, 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 test it. Let's remember how much ink is being used at the bottom with those dots. So perhaps maybe we don't want quite as many dots on there. So I'm coming straight down, matching up to the quarter. I'm going to take away some of those dots, plus how much room the block takes up. And I'm just in the corner. And since maybe it might be nice to just fill this up, I'm going to look from the side. and just stamp a little bit in the corner. I think I'll just leave that. I think I'll quit while I'm ahead. That's always a good thing to do. Alright, so then this is going to go on here. This is going to go on here. And this is going to go in here. And now I'm ready to write a beautiful note to someone. Okay, so I really appreciate you watching. And this was a really easy card, but I bet that I have managed to make it last an hour, because that seems to be how long it takes me to talk. So thank you, and I will talk to you again later in another video.